Life of Pi Summary Number 12. Morning brought clearer thoughts and an unpleasant realization to Pi. Tigers are endurable and persistent, so, driven by hunger, Richard Parker would easily swim to the raft to get him. When it comes to thirst, tigers from the Sundarbans are known to drink saline water. Pi was doomed. As ironic as it was, Richard Parker, the source of Pi's fear, became Pi's driving force. He noticed Richard Parker watching him intently and calmly, as only a satisfied animal would. The knowledge of animals allowed him to conclude that the tiger was friendly and harmless at the moment. Only then, Pi realized how happy he was for having the tiger around. Knowledge of having a life-threatening creature on board made Pi more combative and tactical. A new idea crossed his mind: to tame the tiger. He started the training immediately, since conditions were perfect. Pi imitated the circus announcer and started yelling and summoning visitors to pay close attention to the Trans-Pacific Floating Circus. The sudden noise caught Richard Parker's attention and he started roaring. Pi continued shouting and blowing his whistle until the tiger backed off to the bottom of the boat. The first training session was over, and the final product of the training would be divided territory, where the middle bench would become neutral territory and the bench with supplies, Pi's. To keep Richard Parker alive, Pi had to provide him with food, and the only inexhaustible source of food was the ocean. Therefore, Pi had to start fishing. Besides, there were other things that needed attention. The raft had to be improved and a canopy had to be built. Although the will to survive had not been more prominent until that day, Pi still did not cope well with loneliness and grief. From that point, Pi became mentally stronger. He kept his mind and hands busy with repairs and improvements. He was checking knots on his raft, building a canopy and more comfortable seats, keeping an eye on Richard Parker all the time. It seemed his hard work paid off. Having read the survival manual, Pi woke up determined to try his hand at fishing for the first time in his life. He needed to improvise bait, so he was rummaging through the locker when he realized that Richard Parker's eyes were fixated on him in a hostile way. Pi believed that his end had come. Suddenly he was hit in the face. Overwhelmed with shock, he was grateful for not feeling the pain. Then the other blow in the face came, and the other. It was not Richard Parker who was delivering the blows, but flying fishes. Richard Parker obviously took advantage of the sudden invasion and tried to catch a fish with his mouth, while Pi had troubles handling the constant blows. Dorados were the reason for the fish onslaught. This was a one-of-a-kind opportunity to start fishing. Although the prey was not as rich as he hoped, Pi had another problem. As a vegetarian, not only did he not eat meat, he also never killed an animal. He had a hard time trying to kill flopping fish. He spent the entire day fishing and ended the day with one noticeable catch: a huge dorado. The following morning began with the notion of Richard Parker's restlessness. Pi wondered if he was thirsty, which reminded him to check the solar stills, which were turning salty water into salt-free water. Although a little skeptical, he was soon assured that the device actually worked. He also seized the opportunity to train the tiger by tossing him a piece of fish to catch his attention and blowing a whistle a few times to let him know who was in charge of the meal. The trick worked. The tiger seemed intimidated. At the end of the day, Pi calculated that it had been a week since Tsum Tsum sunk. Chapter 63 begins with a statistic on how much time passes before survivors were brought back home. Pi was the only one to survive 227 days, or over 7 months. His story started on July the 2nd, 1977, and ended on February the 14th, 1978. But he did not know it back then, of course. He continued to practice his daily routine that kept him busy. Rain was the only occurrence that affected his routine, as it would stop all activities. He was not tracking time. Therefore, he lost all notion of time, and that was probably a mitigating circumstance.